Have you ever sat in front of your laptop, looked at your to-do list, and thought, I'll start in 5 minutes. 5 minutes turn into 30. 30 becomes an hour. Before you know it, the day is almost over. And somehow, you've spent more time watching videos, checking messages, or scrolling through social media than doing the one thing you promised yourself you'd finish. Then comes the guilt. You look at yourself and think, why am I like this? Maybe I'm just lazy. But what if that's the biggest lie you've ever believed about yourself? What if procrastination has almost nothing to do with laziness? Today, we're going to uncover what's really happening inside your brain, why procrastination feels impossible to escape, and how understanding it can completely change the way you work, learn, and pursue your goals. Most people believe procrastination is a discipline problem. They tell themselves they need more motivation, more self-control, a better morning routine, another productivity app, another planner, another motivational video. For a few days, everything feels different. Then the cycle returns. The planner gathers dust, the motivation fades, and the work is still waiting. That's because most advice focuses on treating the symptoms instead of understanding the real cause. To understand procrastination, we first need to understand what laziness actually is. Laziness is choosing not to do something because you genuinely don't care enough to do it. Procrastination is different. You care. Sometimes you care so much that the task becomes emotionally heavy. Think about the last important thing you delayed. Maybe it was studying for an exam, starting a business you've dreamed about for years, applying for your dream job, going to the gym, having an uncomfortable conversation, or even replying to an important email. Notice something. You weren't avoiding things that didn't matter. You were avoiding things that mattered the most. If you were truly lazy, you probably wouldn't feel guilty. You wouldn't spend hours thinking about what you should be doing. You wouldn't lie awake wishing you had started earlier. But procrastinators often carry guilt everywhere they go. That guilt is evidence that the problem isn't a lack of ambition. It's emotional resistance. Here's something fascinating. Your brain wasn't designed to make you productive. It wasn't designed to help you become rich, successful, or famous. Its first job is much simpler. Keep you alive. Thousands of years ago, avoiding danger meant surviving. Although the world has changed, your brain still reacts to emotional threats in surprisingly similar ways. Today, danger doesn't always look like a wild animal. Sometimes danger looks like failure, rejection, embarrassment, judgment, perfectionism, self-doubt, fear of not being good enough. When your brain connects these emotions to a task, it treats that task as something to avoid. Its goal isn't to ruin your future. It's trying to reduce your discomfort right now. That's why your phone suddenly becomes irresistible. You don't suddenly become interested in watching random videos. You're looking for relief. Scrolling distracts your mind from uncomfortable emotions. For a few minutes, it works. The anxiety disappears. The pressure fades. Your brain rewards you with a little burst of comfort. But there's a hidden cost. The task is still there. Only now there's less time to complete it. As the deadline gets closer, the task feels even bigger. The stress becomes stronger. The guilt becomes heavier. And beginning feels even harder than before. This creates a loop. An important task appears. You feel overwhelmed. You avoid it. You experience temporary relief. Time passes. Stress increases. Guilt follows. The task becomes even more intimidating. So, you avoid it again. Each time this cycle repeats, your brain learns something dangerous. It learns that avoidance works. Not because it solves your problems, because it removes uncomfortable feelings, even if only for a short time. The more often this happens, the more automatic procrastination becomes. Many people think they're waiting for motivation, but motivation is often misunderstood. Most of us imagine motivation arriving first, giving us the energy to act. In reality, action usually creates motivation. Think about pushing a broken-down car. The hardest part is getting it moving. Once the wheels begin turning, keeping it moving requires much less effort. Your brain works in a similar way. Starting creates momentum. Momentum creates motivation. That's why people often say, once I started, it wasn't actually that bad. The problem was never the work itself. The problem was beginning. The moment you understand that, everything begins to change. You stop waiting for the perfect mood. You stop believing motivation has to come first. Instead, you realize that action is what creates motivation. Think about the last time you finally started a task you had been avoiding for days. Before you began, it felt enormous. You imagined it would take forever. You pictured every possible mistake you could make. But once you took that first step, something changed. The task wasn't as impossible as your mind had convinced you it would be. That doesn't mean the work suddenly became easy. It means your brain stopped treating it like a threat. The hardest part wasn't writing the first paragraph, opening the textbook, or making the phone call. The hardest part was convincing yourself to begin. This is why successful people aren't always the most talented or the most motivated. They're often the people who have learned to start before they feel ready. They understand that confidence isn't something you find, it's something you build through action. Every small step sends a new message to your brain. Instead of saying, "This is dangerous," you're teaching it, "I can handle this." Over time, that message becomes stronger than fear. But this doesn't happen overnight. Changing a habit that's been reinforced for months or even years takes patience. There will still be days when your mind tells you to wait until tomorrow. There will still be moments when distractions seem more appealing than progress. The difference is that now you'll recognize what's happening. Instead of believing every thought your brain offers, you'll be able to pause and ask yourself a simple question. Is this really about the task, or is it about the feeling attached to it? That single question can interrupt the cycle before it takes control. It gives you a choice. You can follow the familiar path of avoidance, or you can take one small action, not because you feel motivated, but because you've decided your future matters more than your temporary comfort. Remember, progress doesn't require giant leaps. It begins with the smallest possible movement. Opening the document, writing one sentence, reading one page, making one phone call. Those actions may seem insignificant on their own, but repeated consistently, they become the foundation of lasting change. Every meaningful achievement begins exactly the same way, with someone deciding to start before they felt completely ready. And that decision is available to you today, right now, not when you're more confident, not when life becomes less busy, not when everything feels perfect. Now, because the version of you that finishes the journey is created by the version of you that's willing to take the very first step. So how do you break the cycle? The first strategy is to make the first step unbelievably small. Don't promise yourself you'll write 20 pages. Promise yourself one sentence. Don't aim to study for 4 hours. Study for 5 minutes. Small actions don't scare the brain the way huge commitments do. Ironically, once you've started, you'll often keep going. The second strategy is to stop chasing perfection. Perfectionism sounds admirable, but most of the time, it's fear wearing a disguise. If your first attempt has to be flawless, you'll delay starting because failure feels unacceptable. Instead, give yourself permission to produce something imperfect. You can always improve it later. A finished draft can be edited. A blank page cannot. The third strategy is to focus on starting instead of finishing. Don't ask yourself, "Can I finish everything today?" Ask, "Can I begin right now?" That single shift removes pressure. Beginning is usually the hardest part. Continuing becomes much easier once your brain realizes the task isn't as threatening as it imagined. If you've spent years calling yourself lazy, maybe it's time to rethink that label. Maybe you're overwhelmed. Maybe you're anxious. Maybe you're afraid of failing. Or maybe you care so deeply about succeeding that the pressure has convinced you not to begin at all. There's an important difference. Laziness says, "I don't want to." Procrastination often whispers, "I'm afraid to." And fear can be understood. Fear can be managed, not overnight, not through guilt, but by taking one small step, then another, then another. Progress isn't built through giant leaps. It's built through tiny actions repeated consistently. Every time you choose action over avoidance, you're teaching your brain a new pattern over time. Those small decisions become habits that shape who you become. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "I'll do it later," pause for a moment. Ask yourself one simple question. What am I really avoiding? You might discover that the obstacle isn't the task itself. It's the emotion attached to it. Once you understand that, procrastination begins to lose its power. Remember this, you don't have to feel motivated. You don't have to feel confident. You don't have to feel ready. You simply have to begin. Because progress doesn't belong to the most talented. It belongs to the people who take the first step, even when it feels uncomfortable. One decision, one action, one small beginning sometimes. That's all it takes to change your life. Every decision you make is teaching your brain something. When you choose avoidance, your brain learns that discomfort should always be escaped. But when you choose to begin, even with one tiny step, your brain learns something far more powerful. It learns that discomfort is temporary, growth is possible, and progress comes from action, not perfection. The more often you repeat that pattern, the easier starting becomes. You won't eliminate fear completely, but you can stop letting it make your decisions. And over time, those small moments of courage become the foundation for bigger achievements. Remember, the people you admire aren't fearless. They simply learn not to wait for fear to disappear before taking action. The next small step you take may seem insignificant, but real change is built through small decisions repeated consistently. So the next time you catch yourself waiting for the perfect moment, remember that progress has never required perfection. It has only ever required a beginning. If this video changed the way you think about procrastination, consider subscribing to The Human Loop for more explorations into psychology, human behavior, and the hidden patterns that shape our everyday lives. Until next time, remember, your mind isn't your enemy. It just needs to be understood.